is to bring some awareness and become more thoughtful in respecting everyone's culture and background. So just a few general notes. Uh, as Natasha mentioned, everyone will be muted throughout the program. However, if you do have a question, you can type it into the chat for us to address it throughout today's program. We'll begin with a formal introduction of all of our panelists, and then we will dive into some questions. So to start it off, again, my name is Corey Campbell. I am the Vice President for Student Engagement and Retention at Jefferson Community College, born and raised in Miami, Florida. I've lived in the North Country for just under 2 years, and one thing I really enjoy about the North Country is the ability to participate in all 4 seasons. Typically in Florida and South Florida is that we have what we would call hot and hotter. So it's nice to be able to have all 4 seasons. So we will start with our panelists. Our 3 panelists include Noah LeClaire, Quize Lemieux, and Michael Wills. And so we will start off with Noah. So Noah, if you would please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for having me. My name's Noah. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am a gay cisgender man. I currently am working at the ARC as a contracts vocational coordinator, and I just graduated from Niagara University with my bachelor's in social work. Is there anything else you'd like me to add, or is that good?
That works. That works. Thank
Awesome.
you, Noah.
Yeah, thank you.
Quize, if you would, please tell us about yourself.
Hi, my name is Quize Lemieux, and I'm a senior at Messina Central High School. I am a full IB diploma student, and I've lived in the North Country about for 8 years now. I used to live in New York City. I came from Tibet, a province in China. And one thing that I enjoy being in the North Country is the quietness of it, actually. I've been in the city for a long time, so once I got here, I really enjoyed being able to travel by cars and not by trains anymore, and just having like a small community. Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you, Quize. And Michael, if you would, please introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Michael Wills, and I am from the Washington metropolitan area, moved up to the North Country 22 years ago to teach business and computers at Edwards Knox Central School. And I have been fortunate that I have taught at several schools up here in the North Country, and I've gotten to know families all over all over the map up here, and it's been great. One of the things that I love about the North Country is the small community. It was I learned early on that that your children could get written up in the newspaper for sports or something they did academically. And I just thought that was wonderful, because coming from where I came from, you had to the community is so large that the chance of being in the spotlight was very, very slim. So I like the small community. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. So now we will we'll dive into some questions for our panelists. So the first question: what is the biggest challenge you have faced while living in the North Country? And so, Michael, we'll start off with you.
Actually, for me, the biggest challenge was being accepted, I guess. Well, let me explain it to you this way. I have seen over the years how people have come here to live for one reason or another. In fact, my youngest daughter, both of her pediatricians were here for a brief time, and they're great people, but they left. And I found that that up here in the North Country, they don't want you to leave. So I felt like I was always having to reassure people that I was here for the long haul. I was going to be around, and I have been.
That works. That works. Thank you, Michael. Jose, what about yourself? What's the biggest challenge you have faced while living in the North Country?
I think the biggest thing I've faced is the lack of diversity. So, due to the lack of diversity, one thing that I'm very passionate about is my traditional clothing and anyone's culture traditional clothing. And because there's a lack of diversity, people don't get to see that. People don't get to hear about the different clothing. So, for the longest time, about 10, 11 years, I was not confident with my culture clothing, and I never wanted to wear in front of people because as a teenager you want people to like you want to be accepted, you want to be in the mode of society. So for the longest time, I never wanted to wear traditional clothing. My dad would always force me, not force me, like would ask me, would you like to wear traditional clothing on your graduations, your sixth grade graduation, your eighth grade graduation? And I was like, no, no, I don't want to. Nobody does that. And now being a senior, I finally come to realize, maybe it's the due to like maturity level and stuff, I've come to realize that people actually do know a little bit about the different clothings, and everyone has culture background. And I think because of that, I finally have confidence to wear my traditional clothing to like my senior picture, my graduation picture. So I think that was the biggest challenge living up here.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Jose. And Noah, what about yourself? What's the biggest challenge?
Yeah. Well, I think I forgot to mention in the introduction that I actually was born and raised here. So I'm kind of a North Country native, just to put that out there. And I also want to acknowledge that, I have a privilege of being a man, and I have a privilege called white privilege, right? So, I will never face the barriers and discrimination as someone with, someone who is a person of color and who is also gay. So I can only speak on my experience, but please know that because of the privilege that I have, I will never face discrimination for my race or for my gender identity. I just wanted to put that out there before I just start discussing a challenge I face, because there's a lot of privilege within it. So I guess one of the biggest challenges I face is
I just want to interrupt and say that Noah, you are cutting out. Not sure if you want to pause and then pick it back up.
I'm not sure if he can hear you.
I'm wondering if it's his connection.
probably just
Yeah, it sounds like Noah. Can you hear us? All right. So it sounds like we're having some technical difficulties with Noah. So we will come back to Noah to get his perspective, because we definitely wanted to hear about it. In response to some of Michael's comments, there was a note that there was some difficulty for a few that have moved from the North Country, kind of having a celebrity status, being from a small community, And then, as Michael mentioned, when you go into a larger community, it may not have that, that popular status because the community might not be as tight knit or as small in general. So, just wanted to follow up on Michael's comments about essentially, having things posted about, children or students in the area that are doing well, whether academically, scholastically, athletically, things of that sort. So. Just want to say that. Noah, can you hear us now? All right. No? Okay. All right. So we are, we're going to also have a comment in regard to what Jose mentioned in terms of being different in the North Country, especially being a woman of a different color and race. It can be difficult, and that sometimes people have been harsh or not welcoming as well. So we've gotten that feedback as well. So definitely want to acknowledge that, and that's kind of why we're here. Essentially to learn about some of the the challenges that are going on and what we can do as a community, to be welcoming to everyone. All right. So Noah, when you are back on and you can hear. Let me know, and then we'll come back to you so that way we can get your perspective on some difficulties you faced. So in the interim, I'm going to jump to another question. What are some ways that your friend or group club work is making a difference in the community regarding justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion? So Jose, I'd like to start off with you. So what are some ways that you, friend, group, club, whomever, are making a difference in our community?
Because I'm a full IB diploma student, I get the opportunity. Well, everyone does, but I do seek out more opportunities to work with people in the community. So there are two clubs that I want to touch base on real quick, and that is Interact Club and Link Crew Club. And those two are, first of all, Interact is a bunch of students working together to make a difference in the community, locally or nationally. We do have one national project that we work on every year. And Interact has been something that I've been very passionate about. I've worked in since I was freshman, and this year I have the opportunity to really work close hand with everyone. So it is, we help anyone that needs clothing, that needs materials, to serving food to elderlies, to helping at the nursing home, highway cleaning, neighborhood cleaning, anyone that needs any sorts of services, we are there. We work close hand with the Rotary Club also. Anytime they need help, we are there. We also tutor and everything. And then Link Crew is upperclassmen helping freshmen, new upcoming freshmen, to be welcomed at high school. High school is projected to be a tough place for people, so there are a lot of young people that are nervous to come into the high school. So I had the opportunity for both years, my junior and senior year, to work close with 10 freshmen, and I've met people that face depression. I have seen people that are in the LGBTQ community. I've worked with people that have mental problems and everything. So being able to help those people feel more welcomed or enjoy is the most rewarding thing, because I had one student that was very had mental illness and everything, and did not want to come to school, did not come to orientation. So I reached out to the parents and everything. And this was my junior year. I was going into senior year that summer. That parent paid a visit to my dad's restaurant, and she, was saying thank you for everything, and he loves school now. And I pay a visit to him every once in a while just to see how he's doing. And it's because of this club that I got to meet this person, or I would have never made a difference in his view on school. So yeah.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you. So having that involvement through different clubs and organizations and kind of networking as well. So thank you. Michael, what about yourself? What are some ways that you're making a difference, or some groups that you're affiliated with are making a difference in regards to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion within the community?
Most significantly, I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County People Project, and this organization came into being about 6 years ago, and its thrust is to improve the lives of everybody here in the North Country. And we have done a lot of good things. For example, when the pandemic hit, there was a push to acquire masks, and there were a lot of volunteers who made masks and dropped them off at a central location. And there were volunteers who picked up masks to deliver door to door to whoever needed them. The organization has gotten winter coats for students in need for a couple of years now. And they have put on back to school events with the coordination of community schools coordinators and other volunteers from the teacher unions and from the schools themselves to acquire books and backpacks and supplies, and it continues to grow. And I'm very proud to be able to belong to this organization. There are a lot of people involved, and they do a lot of good things.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for your input. So Noah, I see that you are back with us. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Absolutely.
I'm in
Absolutely.
my car, so my office is kind of in the back, so I don't think I was getting good connection. So adapting.
That we're absolutely. That's the name of the game. So we're going to throw two questions at you consecutively.
Okay.
So I don't think everyone was able to hear your biggest challenge. So if you could talk about your biggest challenge while living in the North Country.
Yeah, so growing up here, I obviously am really accustomed to the area and stuff like that. But I feel like my biggest challenge has been, and it continues to be, is just a feeling of isolation and being alone. Um, we have very limited opportunities for the LGBTQ plus community here. And the representation within the community and within community stakeholders is very low. I know, like growing up, I had no one really to look up to as kind of that gay role model, because we live in a heterosexist world where everyone just kind of assumes you're straight regardless, right? And that can be really destructive because then you're just assuming, everyone's straight, and you're not really being completely inclusive if anyone's, strays away from that. So I guess like my biggest thing would be just like the isolation aspect and, always having that feeling of anxiousness, before, meeting new people always, because, I always, in a sense, always have to come out. If I meet new people, if I start a new job, regardless, and I never know how anyone's going to take that. They could absolutely not agree with it. They could be in favor of it. So it creates a lot of feelings of loneliness, and so yeah, that's probably would be my biggest challenge to date, at least.
Understood. Thank you, Noah. And we've
Yeah.
seen we've seen to your point, we've seen some of that at the school as well with some of our students. Whether they're
Yeah.
from the North Country area or the surrounding area, the state or the country, essentially, whether they're thinking about coming out or whatever the case may be, and kind of having that isolation and ensuring that we have the appropriate services and support services for them. So excellent. So thank you.
No, thank you.
The second of the questions: what are some ways that either you, a group, club, organization is making a difference in regarding justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion within the community?
Yeah, so I know, at least in the North Country, when I can, I try to volunteer at the Q Center, which is an amazing opportunity for LGBTQ plus youth to come together and, really create a safe space for them to be able to, you know, talk about anything they're going through and, to build that community and, to really focus on, that they're not alone and they have community supports here. And that's something I wish I had in high school, and it could have been available to me. I just didn't know it. But I'm involved in volunteering when I can there. So that's awesome. And since I just graduated in May, so when I went to college in Niagara University for social work, and there I was able to take a social justice and diversity class. And that class opened my eyes up so much to the injustices and inequities in America and throughout the world. So I worked with the General Education Committee of Niagara University to get this to be a mandatory class for everyone to take because it talked about diversity elements, it talked about social injustice, how to go, how to be an ally, and it was extremely eye-opening to me, and I wanted to grant that opportunity to everyone because a lot of times in our community people don't have an understanding, and it's a lack of education that people have, and they can't empathize with people because they don't experience it. So that's something I worked on, and I also was able to intern at the Rose Bentley Ostapenko Center for Race Equality and Mission, my senior year placement, and there we tackled racial inequity. um, so specifically, I focused on, voter suppression within the Black community, and I was able to hold a voter registration campaign to register people to vote. We also were able to create a program in regards to um, granting 12 college credits to students of color because, literature states that students of color don't graduate or aren't given the opportunities as the white students. So that class was really to intervene to kind of, give them that edge that they historically don't get. And then I also was able to run a youth conference where over 200 youth came together to talk about racial injustice and how to promote racial equity, and how to take collective action as youth to promote racial equity. So those are just a few of the things I've done, and I'm always striving to do more. And I hope, as I continue down my professional career, that I'm able to do more impactful work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Noah. It sounds like you have involvement in various aspects and facets of the
Yeah.
community. So excellent. Thank you for sharing. So, just to kind of reiterate, if anyone attending has questions, please send them in, and we can definitely get them addressed. So, going on to another one, and Michael, we're going to direct this one your way. What do you believe is the number one way we can make a substantial difference regarding justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion?
I think primarily we have to get it out there. I think the United Way is an excellent vehicle to be able to make people aware of how things are, and I think it needs to be a sustained effort, and not only by the United Way, but also by the communities, because I think when we get to know each other, when we cultivate strong relationships with each other, we can make improvements in these areas.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that awareness piece, and then Noah, we'll throw it your way as well. What do you believe is the number one way to make a substantial difference regarding justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to education, the educational aspect of it all. Especially in the North Country, like there's not a lot of diversity here. There's not a lot of exposure to that. So really going into these communities and establishing, social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion, like education, is important, and programs to promote that. um, you know, because within these classes, you learn about diversity elements, you learn about your privilege, you learn about how to be an ally. Um, well, it's not even enough to be an ally. I went to this conference and they were saying, it's not enough to be an ally because that's not all the way in. Like, you have to be an accomplice. You have to be all in, to help whatever you're helping with. And I completely agree with that. And I believe, the school systems, if there's any teachers on here or social workers or anyone that can implement these like programs to promote trainings, to promote, um, you know, the classes for social justice and diversity, but even monthly programs to focus on one diversity element at a time. I think if we start there, we can kind of mold and implement this kind of education into the youth, and we can start there. But that's where I would start. But I'm more of a macro kind of thinker. But yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Noah. And Michael, we'll turn it back over to you.
Reminded me of something. And, I remember when I was in the military years and years ago, the military was already teaching human relations classes because we all came from varied backgrounds. And I felt that it was very, very helpful. One of the things that we don't have in our educational system is bringing out the justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We don't have a class in that, and not that it needs to be a full year course or something like that, but this information needs to get out to people. It needs to get out to children in school. Recently, there have been a lot of events that have sparked conversation in classrooms. However, it would be, I think, an improvement if we already had some sort of training in these areas so that when issues come up, we can speak about them with open minds and make informed decisions about things. One of the things that I tell my students is that inform yourself, read the newspaper, read the New York Times. Don't take someone's word for anything. You've got to inform yourself, and then you can make a good decision. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Michael. Nothing like having that primary information. I want to just touch on this in terms of awareness, and then also kind of acknowledging that sometimes it can be uncomfortable, when we're talking about whether it's diversity, equity, justice, or inclusion, and having that acknowledgement, because it does kind of pushes boundaries, if you will. But thinking of diversity as really any type of difference. Whether it's, a physical difference, a thought process, anything of that sort. And so kind of understanding, others' perspectives. But again, it can be difficult and also uncomfortable, but, we expand our comfort zones, by being uncomfortable. So again, thank you all for your feedback. We've gotten a couple of questions that have come in. So I'm going to throw this out to any of our panelists. One question is, how would youth like to be involved in some of these? Hold on. We have a question, a statement, and then a question. So the statement is: the Tuck Hill Commission is taking on social cohesion and civic engagement programs to address some of the challenges that have been highlighted by the panelists. We are looking for people to join a regional task force. You know of anyone in Jefferson, Lewis, Oswego, or Oneonta counties who might be a good addition to the task force? Are there any lessons learned from the St. Lawrence County People Project as we begin this journey And do we know of any youth that would like to be involved in these regional efforts? So Michael, I'll direct this to you, and then Noah and Quize, if you have anything, to add after Michael, please jump in.
So your question has to do with getting children involved, did you say?
Yes, it says youth, so I'm thinking children and teenagers. But basically, the Tuck Hill Commission's taking on social cohesion and civic engagement programming to address some of the challenges that you, Noah, and Jose have mentioned thus far. And so, looking for people to join regional task force in Jefferson, Lewis, Oswego, and Oneonta counties who might be a good addition. So looking for any lessons learned from St. Lawrence County, as well as any potential people that may be interested in joining to do this work.
Well, I would say that the larger communities do have organizations, student organizations. For example, Quize was speaking about the Interact Club, and that's a good organization to use. However, some of our communities are so small that they don't really support something like Interact, or there is a Lions organization for young people. But like I said, some of the communities are very small. What you have to do is basically enlist the help of people that you know, young people that you know that would be interested, and get them going with things.
Absolutely. So to whomever who had that question, I would ask that you share your contact information with Natasha, and then we can follow up to get you more specifics as to how we can go about, assisting and getting you some resources with that. So thank you for that. We have another comment coming in that the North Country is very conservative, and we need to educate middle and high school students in order to change the dynamic. So again, I think that's something that the panelists have talked about, and we can agree upon. And another comment of using more inclusive language. And what I mean by that is we have someone sharing that they moved from the Washington, D.C. area about 10 years ago, and was surprised at how the schools used Christmas break and Christmas concerts as opposed to holiday break and holiday concerts. And that's something that I've noticed as well. So using that inclusive language, so those who may not celebrate Christmas or any type of holiday still feel included, in these types of events. So excellent comment. We have another question that just came in. So again, we'll throw this out through our panelists. How can I make an impact if I might be one of a few in the community who care about protecting all human rights, and the group is not necessarily in a higher a position of power? So Noah, I'll direct this one to you, and I'll read the question again, and then Quize, I'd ask you to chime in after Noah. So again, the question: how can I make an impact if I might be one of the few in my community who care about protecting all human rights, and the group is not necessarily in a higher position of power?
So my thing is, it's like, you can do things on, it doesn't have to be always big scale, large events or interventions. Like, for example, especially during the pandemic, like, resorting to social media and using social media as a platform of advocacy, and, not being a bystander to, acts of discrimination and hate. So intervening, that can be something very small. If you see something, say something, right? Signing petitions. There's a lot of petitions going around that you can sign, share on your social media. And, I think the biggest thing that you can do as an individual on the individual level is having those awkward conversations. I've had to do it a lot, and it's awkward, right? Because, you are the odd man out. You are the only one that thinks that way, and you have to have those awkward conversations, and you have to, you know, put yourself out there because the people that are, you know, being discriminated against or marginalized, or oppressed, like they need that voice and they need someone to stand up and say something, because if you don't, it's going to continue to happen. They're going to continue to act in that behavior, and it's going to be a cycle. So, you know, it's up to us as individuals to break that cycle. So that's something I would do on an individual level. And you know, collective action is super important. Is finding like-minded individuals, and you know, doing something. You know, communicating with people. Finding groups on Facebook. Social media is fantastic for that. And joining like-minded groups, and you know, putting your minds together, and to think about how you can, you know, promote equity and inclusion, and you know, dismantle hate. So I don't know if that answers your question. I know I kind of touched on a few things, but to the best of my ability, that's what I would personally do, and the advice I have for you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Noah. And you make some very good points. So, Kuzay, I ask you the same thing. How can I make an impact if I might be one in my community who care about protecting all human rights, and the group is not necessarily in a higher power position?
I think you really need to know deep down what it is that you are trying to make an impact on. You need to know that what is your agenda. Um, and second of all, you need to overcome that you're not in a higher power. I think that a lot of people feel selfless, like they're not the president, they're not the governor, so they can't make an impact in someone's life. I think the biggest thing that you can do in your position is do what you can in your position. You can't control everything that is going around the world. So if you want to make an impact on protecting human rights, you need to communicate, you need to educate people, you need to vocalize your thoughts, and you need to stand by what you say. I think reaching out is a key thing. You know, being in high school, just a senior, you know, you think you really don't have a lot of power. But I myself had a club that I stood by highly, and it was at a point where it was going to be broken up, and you need to reach out. You know, I spoke to the principal, I spoke to the superintendent, I ended up going on the board of education, I ended up speaking to the mayor. You know, you need to realize what it is that you're standing for, and you need to communicate that well, because you don't know who you're going to meet and you don't know what they stand for. Maybe what you stand for is exactly what they stand for as well, and maybe they're in a little bit higher power than you are, that they can make a little more a bigger impact than you can. But I think the biggest thing, if you are, you know, thinking you're not in that power, is to communicate with people. Because I think the biggest impact you can make is by changing each individual's mind and perspective, and then that can, you know, become a big thing, and it can diverge.
That works. That works. Thank you, Kuzay. All right, so the questions are coming in, so that's great. So we're going to get to another one. We have a general statement that it's multifaceted and multi-generational. So you know, that's definitely true. So starting with, you know, kids when they're younger, kind of having embracing some of these ideals, or all of these ideals rather, and then you know, as they get older, being able to spread that. So we have a question that came in. How do I talk to someone, probably white, an older generation, about Black Lives Matter or diversity without making them feel uncomfortable or confrontational? So again, I'll repeat that question. How do I talk to someone, probably white, an older generation, about Black Lives Matter or diversity without making them feel uncomfortable? So Michael, Noah, or Kuzay, any of you like to comment on that question?
I'll give it a shot. You know, and I'm doing this because I've had a few conversations with some older white people about Black Lives Matter, and You know, I think the biggest thing is getting away from what people see on the news or they hear, and get to the meat and potatoes of the issue. For someone that gets all of their information from from one news source, may start to believe that is the way things are. However, if you've got two people in a room and they get the opportunity to talk to each other, and one is explaining, like, for example, if I am trying to explain to someone that Black Lives Matter, and Black Lives Matter because young Black men tend to lose their lives when in a confrontation with authorities, with police. And it's not fair. You don't see the same types of things happening to white men or white women or Black women, or like, actually, I shouldn't really say women, because these kinds of incidents that happen, the vast majority are men of one persuasion or the other, but it's Black men that are losing their lives. That's the issue, and that's why Black Lives Matter is the important statement to make. I've seen these other statements, Blue Lives Matter, for example, but it's Black lives that are being lost, and it needs to end.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Noah, it looked like you wanted to jump in and say something.
I was agreeing with everything. It's you know, I think the thing is like, it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, I feel like, regardless. And, as a person, that wants to have those conversations and promote, equity and inclusion, like, you have to have those awkward conversations, and you have to work through it, right? Because, it's kind of like a duty to do. Like, you have to have those awkward conversations, and you have to just work through it. I know that probably doesn't help, but based on my experience, you just have to push through it, and you have to remember, that Black lives are being murdered by, like, police brutality. It's a thing, and it's a conversation that has to happen. And I know personally, I don't care how uncomfortable it's going to make me feel, because it's a conversation that needs to happen, because Black lives are being lost and murdered every day. And that's, for me personally, I don't care if, as being a privileged white man, like, I have to have those conversations with my peers. Yeah.
That works. Thank you, Noah. And I'll chime in on this one as well. I would say, in terms of uncomfortable and confrontational, kind of approaching it from a manner that we're talking about basic human rights. And so, as a human being, if you believe that everyone has the basic, fundamental human right to exist, coexist, things of that sort, then that can be your starting ground. And quick story, and then we'll move on. I have a very good friend of mine who is a white guy and a police officer, and so we actually bowled together. And so he asked me if I ever felt like I'd been racially profiled. And I said, well, I can't prove it, but yes, I have been on multiple occasions. And he didn't believe me, which is fine. And so we went somewhere, and then he watched me be racially profiled, and like, he witnessed it. And so I think it really shifted his mindset because as a police officer, and I acknowledge, typically when you're responding to a situation, it's usually negative, right, in some manner or capacity. And so I think it shifted his mindset and mine as well in terms of like the dialogue that we started having, right? In terms, and I told him like there's a phrase, DWB, driving while black, all that kind of stuff. You have the conversation. If you get pulled over, be calm, all that kind of stuff. So just knowing that those are real things that happen, and they may not happen in your reality, but they may happen in others' realities, that you care about or that you associate with on a regular basis. So good stuff, good stuff. All right, next question. How can we work within our individual organizations to improve inclusivity, diversity, awareness? I feel like this topic is often, still, if you will, taboo in the workplace. So again, how can we work within our individual organizations to improve inclusivity, diversity, awareness, things of that sort? Because I feel like this topic may still be taboo in the workplace. So any of our panelists want to jump in? Again, the question, how can we work within our individual organizations to improve inclusivity, diversity, awareness? I feel like this topic can often still be taboo in the workplace. So any of our panelists want to jump in and give a response to that question? All right, so I'll jump in. So essentially, one of the things, again, is just kind of acknowledging it. And I would say, starting off with having that base conversation of where that person is in terms of, are they willing to acknowledge that it may be an issue or something that is occurring or not occurring, in the workplace, and then how we can work through it. I'll say at the college, we have educational programming, we have social programming, and we really try to get everyone involved. So it's not coming from one particular entity. And when I mean everyone, I mean employees, both our faculty, our staff, students, our commuter students, our residential students, are kind of, if you will, are non-traditional students, so students that may be working or, having class on the weekends and the evenings, maybe, have families, children, things of that sort, to really understand what is going on just within our college community, but then also within the community at large, and talking and acknowledging some of these things. And again, it can be uncomfortable for those involved, but really bringing, that awareness and that education. I think one of our panelists mentioned the notion of education. So, making people aware, or informing people rather, of resources that may be, available within the community to assist with this. Because I think there's been acknowledgement of the lack of diversity within the North Country. So then kind of bringing awareness to that, right? And acknowledging it. So again, starting with that acknowledgement of, we do have XYZ challenge ahead of us, and this is how we can go, to address it, or at least try to address it. All right, so thank you for that question. We have a comment that came in. Someone else is saying that they are from the DC area. So we got a lot of folks from DC on the call, and they said when I use the term "Happy Holidays," I am quickly corrected to say "Merry Christmas." And so yeah, and that happened to me actually at the school, and then I replied "Happy Holidays" and why I said it, and even though I celebrate Christmas, and I know a lot of folks do, there may be someone in the group that doesn't, right? And so again, using that inclusive language. So yeah, thank you for that comment. Question. I am new to the North Country and do not feel as comfortable in this community or my organization to, quote, jump in and address this. How can I overcome this? And so, no, I'm going to put you on the spot because you seem like you are very much willing to jump in. So I'd like us to get your perspective. So again, the question, I am new to the North Country and do not feel as comfortable in this community or my organization to jump in and address this? How can I overcome this?
Um, hmm. Can you repeat the question once more?
Sure,
Sorry.
sure, absolutely, absolutely. So the question is, I am new to the North Country and do not feel as comfortable in this community or my organization to jump in and address this, this being diversity, equity, justice, inclusion, topics along that sort. How can I
Okay.
overcome this?
I mean, you have to start where you're comfortable starting. You know, some people like myself, like I am a big advocate for it. I am not afraid to say anything, regardless of the consequences. But you have to start where you feel comfortable, I would say, and you know, build relationships with people, and really get to know the people you're working with in your community. Before you start having those awkward conversations, or before you start, advocacy work. Um, that's what I would start off on, just very slowly, building those relationships, getting to observe the community and observe your workplace, because I think it's really important to be able to sit back and watch what's already happening, before you intervene. Um, but that's just me personally. I don't know if the other panelists have any other advice. So if you guys do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Noah. Jose, do you have anything to add? And I can repeat the question. I am new to the North Country and do not feel as comfortable in this community, my organization, jumping in and addressing this, this being the topic of diversity, equity, justice, and inclusion. How can I overcome this?
I think it has to begin within yourself. You really have to be confident in who you are and who you present yourself as. Because being in school and being around mostly white folks, it was when I first moved here, it was the same thing. When people make comments, you're too afraid to vocalize. And I have far become that since now. But when I look back to it, I think one thing that made me quickly adapt to the community and vocalize my opinion is that you have to be confident in with who you are and how you want to project yourself as. You don't want to come off as, rude or trying to intervene their opinions about anything. You kind of have to, like Noah said, sit back and intervene. What kind of people you're surrounding yourself with? What are their opinions? And then, in a very respectful way, you want to present yourself, but you don't want to make it seem like you're advocating one side only. You have to realize you have to respect their backgrounds and then advocate yourself. Because if you don't give respect, it's that kind of thing, you aren't going to earn any respect towards yourself. So I think it's respecting their difference first and then presenting yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jose. I think, and Jose makes an excellent point of the respect factor, and it's something that we've, as a society, not just the North Country, kind of lost through social media, the civil discourse. So the opportunity or the ability to really, have a discussion without it, and a disagreement, without it kind of turning into, insults and things of that sort. So that's an excellent point. So thank you. All right, comment. If we talk to folks around us, get the conversation going, whatever level we are at, we may generate a different way of thinking and acceptance. It is up to all of us to do our part, whether on a large scale or small. So again, I'll repeat that. If we talk to folks around us, get the conversation going, whatever level we are at, we may generate a different way of thinking and acceptance. It is up to all of us to do our part, whether on a large scale or small scale. So thank you. That is absolutely true. All right. So I have another question that's coming in. It's kind of a question, but why are African American Black men targeted, or that police feel threatened and end up killing more Black men? Where are we getting this idea? Is there a way that we can try to stop this thought process? So why are African American men targeted, or that police feel threatened and end up killing more Black men? Where are we getting this idea? And is there a way that we can stop this thought process? So I want to interpret the question correctly, because on the one hand, it's saying, why are Black men being targeted more by police? And then on the other, like the thought process that Black men are being targeted by police. So I think it's two different questions. One, the actuality, and then one, the thought process behind it. So again, I'll repeat that. Why are African American Black men targeted, or that police feel threatened and end up killing more Black men? Where are we getting this idea? And is there a way that we can try to stop this thought process? So any of our panelists, and I'll chime in if any of our panelists do not. So open it up. So Quize, Noah, or Michael, would any of you like to comment?
I really do not know why this exists. I really don't. But I believe that if you're walking and you're armed and you are a public servant, you really need to have a lot of training in order to handle difficult situations. So if you're a policeman, you should have a lot of training that that helps you, that keeps you from shooting people unnecessarily, that keeps you from having preconceived notions about the person that you are approaching. But that's, you know, that's about all I have on it. I just feel like somebody's not getting it. The ones that are killing people unnecessarily just don't get it. That you really have to exhaust all of your options before you use deadly force.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll chime in from a couple of different perspectives. I would say to echo Michael's sentiments, education and collaboration. And again, quick story: growing up in Miami as a black male, kind of like anti-police, essentially. Like that was like a no-no. Really didn't collaborate. So it was one of those things where like I'll be over here, you're over there. As long as the two don't meet, we're good. And so as I got older, went off to college, all of that kind of thing, you realize that that thought process is going to be destructive, right? It's going to be destructive for, all communities. And so essentially that collaboration to know the community. So getting the police kind of engrossed, not just in the community, but specifically in the Black community. So there is that collaboration. So there is that partnership going on, and that takes time and training and education, but that's a proactive measure. And I would say, and this is more, personal to me, I would say on the back end of an incident, that the appropriate either investigation or repercussions occur if deadly force is used, and it is determined not to be, but that there is a thorough investigation as to if it had to be used, why, and whatever that process looks like. Because I think, and again, just my personal opinion, if there is not a consequence for action, then the likelihood is, if it's a negative or perceived negative action, that it's going to occur if there's not a, some type of ramification that goes along with it. So, but more so want to be on the proactive side, of course, of education and collaboration to really, get to know, because I had that experience, in college and still have it now, of working with police officers of all backgrounds, men, women, Black, white, and everything in between, and essentially seeing how we can, be partners in, the work that we are, trying to do to improve the community. So very good question. I hope that hope that helps a bit. So we have two questions that came in rather. What practical advice would you give to individuals to start addressing and reforming implicit biases they have? So again, what practical advice would you give to individuals to start addressing and reforming implicit biases they have? That's the first question. And has there been an experience in the North Country that makes you hopeful about increased social justice in the future? So again, the first question, what practical advice would you give to individuals to start addressing and reforming implicit biases they have? So Kwizé, I'll turn this one over to you. So again, the question, what practical advice would you give to individuals to start addressing and reforming implicit biases they may have?
I think the most practical one is your listening skills. Because of the way society works now and everything, everyone is very quick to jump and speak and talk, and also when someone else is talking, you might be silent, but you're really not listening because you're already thinking about what to say next. You're already thinking about, oh, he mentioned this and I don't agree with this. Let me, say something that I disagree about. And I think it's not that. You really need to improve your listening skills. And that's one thing that I've worked very hard for a long time is stop worrying about what you're going to say next and listen carefully about other people's bias or opinions on anything, because ultimately you can't change someone's opinion by forcing your opinion on them. You can only change their opinion by listening to their opinion and then figuring out what is it that you guys are truly disagreeing on, because the going back and forth and you being louder and him being mad, it doesn't work that way. You need to improve your listening skills. And one change that I've seen that gives hope in the North Country would be is I think more than ever this year, a lot of students have come together. There's a lot more awareness due to the social media. Now, I have very different opinions about social media. Sometimes they're great. Sometimes they can provide false information where you're not looking at primary sources. You're only looking at what this post is trending. What is that trending? You lack that internal information, but it is a great way to pull people together. You see who stands behind who, and you can have that educated conversation with that person, and it might pull a connection that you never thought you would have with that person.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you, Kwizé. Noah, do you have anything to add? We'll go to the second question. Has there been an experience in the North Country that makes you hopeful about increased social justice in the future?
Yeah, I would say, this event, right? This is the first time. I mean, I obviously have been gone for a few years because of college, but like, this is one of the first time I have ever seen anything related to social justice, equity, and inclusion. Any kind of training or this kind of series that United Way is doing. I've never seen this here before, and it gives me a glimmer of hope, right? Because people are attending these events. They want to know. They want to increase diversity and inclusion, and it gives me hope. Because for a while, I will admit I did not have any hope. And that's part of the reason why I left the North Country for a little bit. But, that and just the increase of, there was a Black Lives Matter march in Watertown, and that, gave me a sense of, there are like-minded people here that understand and, understand the systemic racism and, want to do something about it. They're not just sitting back and, watching things. They're actually taking action to promote and advocate. So I would say those two things definitely have opened my eyes and have given me some hope for the North Country.
Good deal. Good deal. Thank you. And going quickly back to a point that Kwizé mentioned, listening to understand and not listening to respond, right? So as you're talking, you have 2 ears and one mouth, right? So kind of listening to understand what the individual or individuals you're talking to are saying, and kind of comprehend it and then respond, but not solely listening to respond. So excellent, thank you. So we have a comment: we need to witness profiling when we see it in the workplace, in the community, in our houses of worship. So yes, definitely, we need to witness profiling. We need to witness to profiling when we see it in the workplace, in the community, in our houses of worship. So yes, definitely. And another comment, kind of validation: ask others to witness as well by asking, did you just see that? Like, did you just see what, so and so did, or what just happened? And, getting that validation, essentially acknowledging, part of whatever is occurring, and then ideally being able to address it in some manner moving forward. All right, so I have another question that has come in. Does having a conversation based in human rights become more difficult when a large portion of our society is so misled about the nature of our rights as Americans? As an example, that free speech means you can plan violence. So again, the question: does having a conversation based in human rights become more difficult when a large portion of our society is so misled about the nature of our rights as Americans? And as an example, that free speech means you can plan violence. So one more time for our panelists, the question: does having a conversation based in human rights become more difficult when a large portion of our society is so misled about the nature of our rights as Americans? As an example, free speech means you can plan violence. So any of our panelists want to jump in?
One thing that I consider when that question is asked is there is the misinterpret of human rights basically means you can do whatever you want. I think that a lot of Americans coming from the third world and seeing the things that a lot of Americans have not seen, I think people need to be educated and people need to understand that the rights they have are given. It's by, you have these rights in America because, soldiers are protecting you. They're under the Constitution and everything, but you need to know that they're not yours, that they can be taken away. And I think that's the misconception of it, is people don't see what it is to live in a country or a place that don't have all these basic human rights, so they don't have that. They take it for granted is what I think I'm trying to say. So you need to understand, really be educated in how you have these human rights and in what forms they are in. So yeah.
Yeah, perspective, right? Kind of having that perspective of what it means to have some of these basic human rights, as Quizay mentioned. So thank you, Michael or Noah. Anything to add?
I think that, well, I know that if we could rely upon our politicians and our news sources to speak the truth, it would make this a whole lot easier.
Touche. So getting the information and I guess kind of neutralizing it, if you will, so that way the information that comes out is depicted as the truth for the greater good of the community and society. So excellent. So thank you. All right, we have a comment that came in. I think this applies very much to volunteer communities. Most of my volunteers are older and very set in their beliefs and ideas and difficult to talk about. So yeah. Somebody's believed something for, however long might be a little bit more difficult to talk about. So again, I think this applies very much to volunteer communities. Most of my volunteers are older and very set in their beliefs and ideas, difficult to talk about. We have another comment regarding the Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa. Can we just accept whatever is offered and acknowledge it was meant in the spirit of goodwill. Saying happy holidays sometimes feels to me like not being able to express culture, whatever culture that is. So, and that's a very good point. So we have again a comment related to Christmas, Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa. Can't we just accept whatever is offered and acknowledge that it was meant in the spirit of goodwill? Saying happy holidays sometimes feels to me like not being able to express culture, whatever the culture is. And I think for that, I think the notion going on, so this is a very accurate statement. I think the notion of going to inclusive language is knowing that everyone, may not have their particular holiday, but also accepting like whatever you celebrate is what you celebrate or don't celebrate, but just acknowledging and respecting that someone else may have a difference of opinion, if you will. So if you were to say we're talking about this, or if you were to say Merry Christmas, and then someone were to say, Happy Hanukkah or Happy Kwanzaa or whatever, or Happy Holidays, then that would just be the general exchange. All right. So we have a question: how can we address the difference between token inclusion and representation? That's a good one. So again, how can we address the difference between token inclusion and representation? So, Michael, I'll put this one in your corner if you have any thoughts, and then follow up with Noah or Quize if either of them have any. So the question: how can we address the difference between token inclusion and representation?
I really feel like people have to have their hearts in the right places, because how will you know what's token inclusion? I would hope that people are straight with each other, and I just think that's about all I can add to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the things I would say, me personally, is, and then sometimes it's been awkward, but I don't want to be selected for something because of the color of my skin, right? So I want to be selected, whatever it is, based on my merit, my ability, whatever the case may be, but not solely because of the way that I look. And so if we can get past that physical, and then it's essentially based on merit, or that I should be there, then great. But if it's and it can be a difficult and awkward conversation, but I think to me, that's something that's very important to know, that if something is going to occur, it's based on me as a person, and not just me as a Black person, if you will. All right, Noah, Jose, do either of you have anything to add to that in regards to how can we address the difference between token inclusion and representation? All right, so hearing nothing, we will move forward. We have a general comment: know who you are, be true to yourself, and you will never have regret. So very wise words. So kind of having that reminds me of a quote: if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right? So know who you are, be true to yourself, and you will never have regret. So thank you. And then we have a comment, like my sister says, Happy Hanukkah. And I say thank you and Merry Christmas to you. And she says, thank you, see you next week. Or is that too pushy in terms of culture push? I would say not at all, right? Because, I mean, you have the ability to celebrate whatever it is that you celebrate. And then just recognizing that the person next to you or that you're interacting with has the ability to celebrate whatever they celebrate. And so, yeah, sounds good to me. So again, the comment, like my sister says, Happy Hanukkah. And I say thank you and Merry Christmas to you. And she says, thank you, see you next week. Or is that too pushy in terms of culture push? So I would say not too pushy at all. Another comment, throughout my life, I've noticed that our very young children go along well in school and on the playground, and teachers stress inclusive and just behavior. the children are very receptive. But when they go home, they're getting another message. Don't play with the name Johnny because, XYZ. And so, and that's, that could be true as, as well. With little kids just want to play, right? Don't care what you look like. They just want to play and congregate. So another comment throughout my life, I've noticed that our very young children go along well in school and on the playground, and teacher stress inclusive and just behavior. The children are very receptive. But when they go home and they are getting another message, don't play with Johnny because of, fill in the blank reason. And so, yeah, it's a very, very true comment. So we have another comment. Think of the generational trauma of white folks as well. Generations of them were taught that Black folks are dangerous animals. There were public executions that had to have a huge impression on the minds of white folks that triggered epigenetic changes that we are still seeing the effects of today. So again, another comment, think of the generational trauma of white folks as well. Generations of them were taught that Black folks are dangerous animals, and there were public executions that had to have made a huge impression on the minds of white folks that triggered epigenetic changes that we are still facing the effects of today. And, that's a very true statement in terms of what the belief you're taught. And I was on another forum and it came up, with the history of the country, and you think about, just kind of going back to slavery and thinking that essentially we're only 3 full lifetime generations removed from that, right? And so while we have progressed, a lot as a country, still thinking that there can still be ties, to that or to that mindset, if you will, as well. So very poignant comments. All right, we have a question. And Natasha, keep me on track because I know we're coming up to our time. So if we don't get to answer all of your questions, we will try to, have something or possibly a follow-up, and I'll turn that over to Natasha because I know we are getting close to our time and we want to respect everyone's schedule.
You have about 20 minutes, and I am keeping the questions.
Okay. Gotcha. So Natasha is keeping track of the questions, so we want to be sure to get back to folks, so that way, we can have some type of response. So, question: is the possibility of having from a law enforcement member be included in future meetings to see if they can help us understand what they encountered and what type of trainings they are provided? So that's an excellent question. So Natasha, would point that one your way of just. The question is the possibility of having a law enforcement member be included in future meetings to see if they can help us understand what they encounter and what type of trainings they are provided. So essentially, if we have something else, having a member or members of law enforcement. So excellent question.
Definitely. Thank you.
Comment: the public needs to go to their local police department and ask what is their deadly force policy. So, again, going back to involving law enforcement in this discussion. And so we have a comment, the origins of police stem from sheriffs to ever exist, being trained to be slave catchers during the times when people were enslaved. This is the history of the institution that is known today as the police. And so that came up. That was something that I was thinking. So, it came up here in the comment, but the comment is the origins of police stem from the first sheriffs to ever exist being trained to be slave catchers during the times when people were enslaved. And this is the history of the institution that is known as the police today. So again, some of the challenges that may be faced. And I see one that's specific to me. Okay. In Miami, did the makeup of the police force mirror the makeup of the communities they were policing? It seems like that is one of the starting points as well. Yeah, that's an excellent point. It did not. Typically, you had mostly white police officers. You had a sprinkle of Hispanic police officers, and you had a sprinkle of Black police officers. But for the vast majority growing up, it was mainly white police officers in all the communities. If I had to do a percentage, I'd say it's probably 60% white, 30% Black, 10% Hispanic. And that was kind of the general makeup of of the police force in Miami. It may have shifted now, but that's how it was when I was working, or not working, but growing up. Excuse me. All right, we have a specific question to or comment to Noah. I work as a school counselor, and I just want to give you some more hope that I have a few students who feel comfortable coming out as gay, bisexual, lesbian this year. I am happy that they feel safe, but know it is hard for these students in smaller communities. Love what the LGBTQ Center, love that we have an LGBTQ Center, and always encourage their involvement there. So again, work as a school counselor, just want to give you some more hope that I have a few students who feel comfortable coming out as gay, bisexual, lesbian this year. I'm happy that they feel safe, but know that it is hard for these students in smaller communities. Love what we have, love that we have the LGBTQ Center, and always encourage their involvement. All right. So that is all of the audience questions. So we'll go have a few more for the panel. So we'll start with Jose. How do we? What are some common misconceptions that people may have of you, and how do you react?
I think the biggest misconception or assumption is that Asian people are smart. Um, it's always been from preschool to high school. I've always gotten that comment. If I got 100 on a test, it's because Asian people are smart. I got accepted to really good colleges, and people say it's because Asian people are smart. They accept Asian people and all that. And I think that's the hardest pill for me to swallow, because I do spend a lot of time studying. I spend a lot of time preparing. I spend a lot of time um, doing academic things, and anything I do academically, it's because people say it's because Asian people are smart. It just naturally comes to you, and that is not true at all in any form or shape. I don't know. I've met white people that are highly intelligent. I've met black folks that are like highly intelligent too. So that is the hardest one for me. And how I react to that is I let people know, at study halls, when you guys are on your phone or on your computer or playing video games, I'm studying. And when you guys are just out and about hanging out, I'm at home studying. You can't call someone smart because of their color. People are smart. People are doing well in school because of their hard work, and you shouldn't take that credibility away from them because it's a lot of their effort. You can't call someone, naturally athletic because they're good athlete. They spend a lot of time practicing those moves, practicing those things. So I think that's the biggest one for me.
Absolutely, thank you. And so yeah, you answered the follow-up with how do we combat these misconceptions. So turn it over to you, Noah. The same thing. What are some common misconceptions people have of you, and how do you react?
Yeah, so I actually wrote down a few because there were so many going through my head that I've heard or have been told to me. And the number one thing is like, Noah, like you just chose to be gay. And usually the way I respond to that is kind of a little snarky, I guess. But it's like, when did you choose to be straight? Because the thing is, it comes down to, I guess you can relate this to the nature versus nurture argument, is like, you know, I never chose to be gay. I am just who I am. This is the way I was born. Um, and that's the way it is, right? It's like when what you didn't choose when you were straight. So that's kind of my response to that. And another thing I've gotten is that, okay, so you're gay, you must find every man attractive. And then, I'm just like, no, it's like, same with straight people. And anyone on that spectrum in between straight and gay is like, we all have our own preferences, right? And just like, you have to take it with a grain of salt. And usually most of the time, depending on what it is, I approach it with humor, and kind of give it back to them. Because usually they're just people I know, or so I can respond in kind of more of a snarky tone. And then another one is, who's the man? So this really stems from us living in a heterosexist society, assuming that, everyone's straight. And, for people to conceptualize gay relationships, they have to put one as a male and one as a female, so they can conceptualize it and accept it. But that's not okay, because we're both men, and we're both, you know, we both identify as men, and we are both men. We are not one's female and not one is male. So just kind of squashing that stereotype, and then kind of what ties to the first one I said. Choosing to be gay, it's a phase. I know a lot of people, and people I've worked with, have said that their parents or have said that it's just a phase, like you'll grow out of it, and that's what kind of really negative to the development of the youth, is saying it's a phase, that it's invalidating who they are, because you're saying that who I am and who I love is, it's not true. It's, you're denying it, and you're not validating me, and that's going to create a lot of mental health issues, and everything kind of along those lines. So those are just kind of some of the four big main misconceptions, and stereotypes I've gotten, and kind of ways I've addressed them. I mean, yeah.
That works. That works. Thank you, Noah. Thank you, Noah. And we'll wrap up with this question. What is one thing you would change about living in the North Country? So I know we've only got a few minutes left. So I'd start with you, Jose, and I'd ask if you just give us one quick thing about what you would change about living in the North Country related to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
One thing that I would change about is in the educational system. I think that's where it starts with basis, is teenagers and middle school students. You take what you learn from them and you go on with your life. So I think if you start earlier with organizations or a unit in one of the classes that could incorporate justice, equality, diversity, and that, I think it's really important, because I think the main thing about education is it's not always about reading it from the textbook, from a teacher. I think it's listening to your peers, the people you've grown up with, people you see every day, people that face the same challenges with you but have a different background. I think it's learning from them is the quality and more knowledgeable than a teacher that don't have that background and it is speaking from a broad topic. I think you learn more from peers.
That works. That works. Well, thank you. Thank you. Kind of getting that perspective and bringing it around full circle. So a few things. Got one last comment for Jose, and that was you were speaking of the stereotypes, and so someone was saying that you were smart enough to study, so that way you could get that 100 on your quiz. So a few things. If you weren't able to ask a question and would like to do so, simply email them to Natasha, and we'll get back to you. And her email is Natasha, NATASHA, period, Gamble, GAMBLE. So Natasha, period, Gamble, at United Way, altogether, hyphen, NNY for Northern New York, .org, O-R-G. So natasha.gamble at unitedway-nny.org, and we'll get back to you. And then had a comment that someone was agreeing with you, Jose, in regards to what you were saying. So excellent. So I want to thank all of our panelists, Noah, Michael, Jose. Thank you for all of our attendees. Hope you got something out of this. Hope we can continue. And this is the first of many discussions. Thank you all for attending. Now we'll turn it over to Natasha.
I just want to say thank you to Corey, Jose, Noah, and Michael for joining us today, as well as all of you who registered and were able to join. If, like Corey said, if you have any further questions or we didn't get to one of your questions, just simply send me an email and I will get that answered for you and send that out. I did record this, so you will be receiving the recording. I know some people had to jump off early or they got on late, so we do have that recorded. And we will have further Jedi sessions, so we look forward to that as well. Thank you.